Chair.
Alfred Naro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, can I, first of all, I want to acknowledge the member, Phil Twyford, and it is correct because I know that he himself saw the issue at hand and also put out a press release that he was keen to put through a private member's bill to address this very issue. So I know that the genuine intent that he has in supporting this bill comes from the very issues that he's also talked about as well. Mr. Chair, it is correct that this bill was initially brought through by the Honourable Maggie Barry, so then I've taken this on. And so with all those, I think it's important just to sort of give some authenticity about the reasons, because sometimes you can be given a bill, there's an opportunity there, but there are two parts I want to talk about how I connect to the intent of this bill. The first, Mr. Chair, was that in 2010 I actually stood to run in the Maunga Keke Tamaki electorate for the council. I was new, I was approached, didn't have much time but as I was running for that, I could see the opportunities. In fact, what people talked about under the Super City, here's a great opportunity not only to be part of the executive, but also the opportunities for local boards. And Mr. Chair, I want to acknowledge two people in particular, because while I was running that race, I remember talking to people in our local community. At that time, I was in the area of Panmure and Glen Innes and in Tamaki. And I remember, I want to acknowledge Chris Makware, who's actually on the Maunga Keke Tamaki board, and also Josephine Bartley. And I remember then talking to them about this opportunity, about being on the local boards. And it was Chris that actually said one time at one meeting, you know, I want to talk about, I said, what's your greatest fantasy? I was told off not to say that word because people sort of get a bit misconstrued. And what I meant is, what is your greatest desire? What is your greatest desire? But anyway, I used the word, what's your greatest sort of fantasy and desire? And he turned around and he said this. He said, I'd love one day to become the Prime Minister of this country. Now, actually, I applauded him. This is Chris Makware. And I applauded him, and I said to him, you know, Chris, the fact is that you're willing to stand up for leadership in your community truly does make a difference. Now, Chris Makware actually put his name forward and is a member of the local board. He would never have had that opportunity if it wasn't afforded to him, and also too with Josephine Bartley. And I have to say this, they are both members that actually stood under the Labour Party ticket. Because from my perspective, actually what's more important, okay, first and foremost, is having local representation. Local representation, that's really quite important. And I want to acknowledge that I'm being upfront and honest about that. And this bill is actually about that. And that's why I stand beside this bill, because people like Chris Makware and Josephine Bartley deserve an opportunity to be able to represent this community. And people have said, so is there a mischief for us to undo here? Well, there is. Because you see, in 2010, there were three people, and Warren Flaunty, as was named, was one of those, who stood on one or more local boards. In 2013, there were 5. So the numbers have been growing. So there are other people who are seeing these opportunities, and yes, it may be out of good intent. However, that means that in a system that's meant to create greater representation, as Mr. Twyford has talked about, we're not allowing those opportunities. It's community people like that who have an opportunity, I believe, through this bill, who can put their name forward and can have greater representation. To me, I think actually that's the intent. That's the reason why I wholeheartedly stand behind this bill as well. And so it does on the car pie, that's right. It's really important. Currently at the moment, there's 149 local board representatives, okay? The issue is that there are 5 at the moment who represent 2 or more. Some may have said, and some of the submitters said, well, actually, that's 5. There's surely out of 149, that's not much. But I do think that is 5 too many. I think there are many people that are out there in communities right throughout Auckland who can have the opportunity, I think that through this bill, to be able to step forward and represent their communities as well. So, Mr. Chair, I want to commend those. I know this is not going to be a long speech, but because I think we've got support right across the House. So my intent is genuine to stand behind this bill. I'm grateful to have picked it up. 17 submissions, only 3 were in opposition, and I suppose I don't need to say that. Who were they? There were those people who are currently on 1 or more local boards. But the rest, including Auckland City Council, who actually in this submission clearly said there are conflicts of interest, even though some people have said there wasn't, but there are conflicts of interest that do exist if not in perception, but also to you in reality. I think this bill is important. I commend the committee and also the support that's receiving right across the House.
David Cunliffe.
I think